On today's podcast, we're digging deep into the Instagram community and interviewing Dustin Winfield from Aztec Carpentry. Welcome back, everyone, to the third episode of the Ultimate Deck Podcast. I'm Shane Chapman, and thank you for tuning in to the first two episodes, which have done quite well. We've been getting some great feedback, so we're excited to continue on down the path with this podcast. Today, we're taking a different approach. We're going to do an interview with none other than Dustin Winfield from Aztec Carpentry, now known or in the middle of being transitioned to Aztec Decks. And if you don't know who that is, follow Instagram. Instagram has a very large community of deck builders, deck contractors, deck retailers, etc. Quite a tight-knit group, and there's lots of learning and whatnot that happens out there. And Dustin is one of the, I would say, up-and-comers, he's probably beyond up-and-comer. He's a bit of a mainstay now on Instagram, posts lots of stories, lots of very informative posts, a great follow. So if you have a chance, follow Dustin on Instagram at Aztec_Carpentry and give him a follow. He's worth a follow. December 11th, Dustin and I sat down and talked about his business and his journey to where he is today. Okay, Dustin, welcome to the Ultimate Deck Podcast. Really excited to have you on here. I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation. So how are you doing today?
I'm great, Shane. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here. I've listened to the first two episodes. They were fantastic. So I'm really happy to be on your show.
Awesome. Well, you've got a lot of pressure on you now because we're trying to make each episode better. So you've got to be better than the first two. The onus is on you now.
Well, yeah, I suppose.
So we're going to jump right into it, Dustin. Yeah, that's right. We're going to jump right into it. And let's hear a little bit more about you. Where are you from? I know you're from the Oshawa area. Tell me a little bit about Oshawa, the area you're from, kind of the markets you serve, and a little bit about your personal family life.
Yeah, okay. So I'm not originally from Oshawa, which is in Durham region. I'm from city of Kawartha Lakes. So I was born in Lindsay, which is about 45 minutes north of here. And I kind of grew up half in Lindsay and half up near Balsam Lake, just really in the middle of nowhere out in the country. It's kind of boring. So yeah, I went to school in Lindsay growing up. And so I have two older sisters. I'm 33 years old, I think. Yeah, 33. And so that's where I'm from. So I moved to Oshawa after I got married with my wife. We lived in Toronto for a little bit, and then we bought our house in Oshawa. And we've been here for 6 years, I believe. So that's where we are now.
Awesome. And so that's what your family history. How did you get into the trades? Were you always a carpenter, or did you have a background before you got into it?
No, it's kind of funny. I in high school, everyone questions what they're going to do. There's kind of a panic when you get towards the end of high school. You got to do something, right? And I had no idea. So I'm kind of a bigger guy. I thought, why don't I just be a police officer?
Interesting.
Yeah, I guess, I just thought it would be an interesting job choice. And so before I did that, I graduated high school when I was only 17 years old. I have a late birthday in November. So I was only 17. I knew I was going to go take the Police Foundations course. Really, it was just something to do. And before that, I took the summer off. I didn't want to go to college right away when I was 17 because I was going to be living on campus and it just seemed weird. So I took the summer and I framed with my friend, a good friend of mine, whose stepfather was a framer and he had his company. So I framed for that summer for the first time with them. And it was great. I enjoyed working outdoors. But to be honest, I knew nothing about carpentry and nothing about framing. So I was so green that the whole summer I was just trying not to kill myself, basically. They barely even let me touch the nail gun. When I got to use it for the first time, it was kind of scary, as it is for most people, I think, for the first time, if they're not from the trades growing up. So I didn't get into framing till after high school. And then I did go to Police Foundations in Peterborough for 2 years, 2-year course. And then, I still wasn't really inspired to be a cop at the end of that. So I took an additional year of business marketing. And that didn't sit well with me. So I went back to framing. I went back and joined my friend and his stepdad again for another 3 years, actually. And that's that.
So yeah, I have no idea why, and I've never thought and looked at you and thought this guy looks like a police officer before. But now that you say that, I could totally see you being a police officer. I've only met you for what, like an hour one time, but
Yeah.
for some reason that makes a lot of sense to me now.
Well, I don't know. When
So,
I think about myself, I think there's no possible way I could be a police officer because I don't know how I appear, but I'm very laid back and I don't really want to be bothered, with all the hardships that go along with being a police officer.
It's certainly, I would think, would be an interesting career path. That's for sure. So you started your company, Aztec Carpentry. How long ago was that, would you say?
So as far as building seasons go, like deck seasons, I've been 4 years full time on my own, but I did start my business before that, probably an additional year earlier than that. So I did go to work for another framer in Toronto that I worked for him for 3 years. And towards the end of that 3 years, I started my business just part-time. I knew that someday I was going to have my own business. And I thought, well, you know what? I might as well just start now. I have several years of framing experience. I'll start accumulating some tools. I started advertising on Kijiji. I don't know if our American friends know what that is. It's basically the Canadian Craigslist. So you can post free ads on there. And I just advertise like basement framing. And because obviously on evenings and weekends, I can't frame a house and I don't have a crew. So I just focused on things that I could do, in a weekend or two. So yeah, basement framing. I advertised decks. I didn't really get many decks right away. So yeah.
So I'm curious, do you still advertise on Kijiji?
Yeah, you know what? It was pretty good for starting out. Kijiji, there's a lot of price shoppers on there, obviously, a lot of tire kickers. But you know what? For a guy just starting out part-time, it's free. You can't really go wrong. Yeah, you got to weed some people out, but I got some actually really good jobs off of there.
I found our stories are fairly similar. I kind of started as a hobby, got into it. That's how I got my first jobs too, is I went to the classified ad site like Kijiji. We've got used Regina here. I think there's a used insert city name pretty much everywhere, at least in Western Canada. But that's what I found, is that it was great to get in and try to find jobs, because that's where people were looking for handyman work. But man, did I ever find, like you said, tire kickers there. And so eventually I realized that that's not the best place to be looking for work unless you're desperate.
Yeah, that's right. So it was good for a start, but quickly I phased out of that. That was actually a really interesting point in my business when I stopped posting on Kijiji, because I had built enough referrals that I was getting enough work coming in to keep me busy full time. And when I looked back and I realized, wow, I haven't posted on Kijiji for quite a while. This is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
You've taken the next step when you can stop posting on classified ad site like that.
Yeah.
So seem to be kind of gearing more towards decks now. That wasn't always the case, I assume. What is it about decks specifically that you really enjoy, that you're wanting to kind of move to that a little bit more specifically?
Well, decks have always kind of been on the forefront of my business goals of things to build. When I started out, obviously I was doing a broad range of carpentry projects, but decks was always in the front of my mind of what I wanted to do. Obviously I have several years of framing, so there's framing in decks. You don't have to build an entire house. It's basically framing a floor structure and some steps, which is, it's enough framing to keep me satisfied for that. There's just so much that goes into decks that a lot of people don't really think about. Obviously there's creativity. You have to design the thing. It's not always just, a square. There's a lot of problem solving that goes along. I think if we had to live our whole lives and not solve any problems, we would just drop dead from boredom. So working outdoors with tools.
I completely agree with that, man. You got to have some sort of satisfaction at the end of the day.
Yeah, we got to test ourselves a little bit. So there's always problems to solve. There's a lot of artistry that goes along with decks. There's the artistic side of it. We're not just robots nailing wood together. There's always an artistic flair, and you can really see this on Instagram these days. The stuff these guys are building is just incredible. So artistic.
Certainly nowadays, right? It's really kind of taken on its own life with people trying to add some flair to their projects now. It used to be just banging a few nails into some wood and building a square. That used to be what a deck was, right?
Yep.
Thankfully, to the HGTV shows and just the fact that people are looking outside and being like, hey, let's spend some more time outside. People are starting to want to spend more money out there, and they don't want the same deck that their neighbor has. So it's really an opportunity for guys like yourself to make it more fun, not only for the homeowner, for the customer, but for yourself. Now you get to add that, like you said, the challenge is part of the fun of it. So
yeah, and yeah, and the great thing about social media and the internet these days is we're connected with people all over the world, deck builders from, literally all over the world. So maybe back in the day, a deck builder might compare himself to another deck builder in the same town. But now we compare our decks to decks from all over the world and the best decks from all over the world. So it really inspires us to be innovative and strive to reach that next level, which is just great.
Completely agree. So you mentioned before that you don't have a crew, and that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, is that you've, as far as I can tell from and if anybody wants to follow Dustin on Instagram, currently your name is Aztec Carpentry. Is there an underscore in there as well?
There is, yeah, between the two words, yeah.
Okay. Aztec _ Carpentry. So it seems to be you by yourself quite a bit on there. Is that intentional? Are you wanting to work solely by yourself? Or is it more of a matter that you can't find good, reliable people to work with you?
Well, yes and no. It just started that way out of necessity. Like I said, I started part-time. I didn't have a crew. I didn't have enough work coming in to be able to sustain a crew. So what I did is I just busted my ass. I worked so hard, and I've been banging out these decks ever since. So it's never really come down to I need employees. These 4 years I've been building, but you know what? I'm starting to really see the need, and I'm not blind to the fact that a good business does need good employees to survive. I know it's coming. I feel it when we get a deck package dropped in the driveway and I carry it into the backyard. It really takes a toll on your body. This wet pressure treated wood, man, it's not light.
Those are the moments where you're like, boy, I could really use an extra hand.
Yeah,
right now.
so that's right. And it's interesting. Last year, 2017, I actually did hire my very first employee. Strictly as kind of a laborer. He he went to Durham College and took the carpentry 1-year course. But the problem with that course is they teach them, I'll say teach lightly, they teach them all aspects of carpentry, and they only touch on each aspect for a day. And it's limited hands-on experience. So by the end of the 1 year, they haven't retained anything because there's no repetition. So he was basically green, and for a laborer, it worked out, but I didn't. Another aspect of deck building in any business, for that matter, is you have to have your pricing right. So, in order to account for the increased cost of doing business with the labor expenses, I did increase my prices a bit, but it wasn't quite enough. So, despite having a great year, it wasn't where I wanted it to be. So I looked back at previous years and I thought, well, you know what? I kicked butt those years solo. Let's try it again. So this year, 2018, I did go solo again, and I had an incredible year, but it took a toll on me physically. So,
it for sure adds another element when you need to start accounting for employees in your pricing structure, because working by yourself, which I also did for quite some time, if you make a little bit less money, it's not that big of a deal on a job. You don't end up losing money. You just personally take home less money. And so, but when you start adding employees into the mix, and then all the costs that come with having the employees on the WCB side and your insurance and the holiday pay and everything else, like there's a lot of things you need to be mindful of when you start pricing. It just changes the game a little bit on the pricing side for sure.
Yeah, that's true. And, we hear of a lot of contractors not doing it the proper way. When they hire employees, they bring them on as subcontractors, which isn't legally the correct way to do it. And they rely on the employee then to do all their deductions themselves. And the poor employees, they might not even realize that this is happening. They may just agree to whatever just to get the job. And then at the end of the year, they realize that now they have to pay all these deductions. And they thought they were making a higher hourly wage. Well, not the case, because now they're screwed with deductions. So yeah, when I hired my employee for the first time, and what I hope most deck builders do is, cover them with WSIB. You have to pay the fees. do the proper deductions for them, hire them as a legal employee, which you should. It's not just the straight up hourly wage. There's a lot of other money that you end up having to pay.
That's right. Yeah. So with all the help comes a lot of complications as well. But
yeah, that's true. There's a quote I like, stay small, keep it all. And that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, that's right. That's certainly one way to go about it for sure. Yeah. So Dustin, you're currently, at least on Instagram, you've gone through a bit of a rebrand lately, I would call it. So your name or your logo previously was just Aztec Carpentry, and now you've changed it. You've got yourself a fancy new logo that just says Aztec Decks. I assume that this is going to filter through your entire business. You're going to start operating under Aztec Decks as well and start specializing just on decks. Is that correct?
That is true. Yeah. So I just kind of been testing the waters. I've been thinking about it. And this is something that I think has just naturally been happening over the last 4 years because I've already kind of been focusing on decks anyway. So it's time that I brand myself as such, a specialized deck builder. So yeah, I got this big new flashy logo made. I put it on Instagram. The response has been great, except one jackass thought it might be a little too busy. I don't know who that guy was.
Cannot imagine somebody saying that.
No, but you know what? It's there's a lot in the logo, but I think I'm gonna make it nice and big on the van. I drive around this big giant white billboard of a van. I got the Ford Transit high roof extended length. It's the biggest model they have, and I got nothing on it right now. So I'm gonna plaster this giant logo on the side of it, get all my information on there. But yeah, so I really do want to just specialize in decks. It's been a long time coming, and it's time that my brand and business name reflects that.
Yeah, I think that blank wall of a canvas that you drive around is probably one of the best dollars to spend on marketing, in my opinion. And especially when you got a nice big flashy new logo that you can kind of portray and it's eye catching and whatnot. It's a no brainer to do that for sure. So was this a hard decision for you to make? Did you have fears about, oh no, if I call myself just a deck builder, am I going to lose other jobs? Or did you finally come to terms with the fact that you don't really want to do the other jobs anyway, and there's enough work out there in the decks to do? Was it a hard decision to make?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely enough decks out there that I could just stay always on decks. Our area is booming. We're east of Toronto, in Oshawa. All the towns in this string along Lake Ontario are booming. Curtis, Bowmanville's expanding rapidly. Oshawa's expanding north. Brooklyn, everywhere is just honestly like 100 more deck builders could just set up shop here, and I wouldn't even notice because there's just so much work. Thousands of houses being built. Now, I'm not saying I want more competition. So if you guys are listening to this, don't be setting up shop. You
got me thinking maybe I should move down the highway here or something.
But no, it was honestly, it's been coming for a long time. Like I said, I've been focusing on decks for 4 years now that I've been in business. And I just thought, you know what? It's time. It's time. It just kind of rolled off my tongue. You know what? Let's do it right now. So I'm taking some time off.
Feels good.
Oh yeah, it feels great. It's kind of like my purpose has been fully realized. Mm-hmm. People go through life not knowing what they want to do. They go to crappy jobs that they hate. They work for a boss they despise. But I wake up in the morning and I am so happy to just build decks. You know what? It's great.
So are you planning to, I know you are in Southern Ontario, or still call it Southern Ontario. So your winters aren't as harsh as they are here, but you still get some nasty weather out there in the middle of winter. Is your intention now to build decks all year round? Are you still going to take some of those inside frame jobs from time to time in the winter?
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm still going to always have to take some indoor work in the winter. I don't think there's any getting away from that.
Because you're soft?
People, sorry, what?
I said, is that because you're soft?
No. Hey, man, for 6 or 7 years, we framed houses all winter long. Minus 30 degree centigrade days would be out there framing. No softness here. Just that's
what I tell people here too. Some people ask, especially not from even from here. I used to get questions like, you guys don't seriously build in the winter, do you? And it's like, well, yeah, if we have to, if there's a job that goes in the winter, fine, we'll do it. And they're like, well, that's crazy. Why would you ever do that? And it's like, well, drive around town. Every framing crew that frames houses does it all year round. They don't take days off, right? Like they're out there when they've got snot icicles hanging off their beard. Like if you commit to the proper dress and you just get used to being outside when it's cold, it's not really that big of a deal aside from fighting your tools and getting them to work properly.
We get used to our environments. Houses got to get built.
Exactly.
People need a place to live.
That's right. That's right. So you mentioned you don't want 100 deck builders popping up, but I'm sure you've got some competition out in your market right now. It seems that especially the chuck and the trucks will kind of follow where the work goes. So if your area is booming right now, I'm assuming you've got a lot of guys that are just, chuck and the truck is the best way. I think that came from Mark from Wolf, used that conversation or that term quite a bit for those guys. There's got to be a lot of those guys popping around. Do you have a lot of other legitimate competition, and how do you set yourself apart in your market?
Yeah. So, I always see a lot of guys driving around in their beat up pickup trucks, and, they could possibly just be working for beer money. So I tend to price myself out of their area of, clients. There's price-based clients and value-based clients, and I'm trying to sell myself to the value-based clients. There's definitely competition around, if you want to call it that. There's a lot of deck builders. I may go to Whitby or Curtis, go to the Home Depot to pick something up, and I'll see 4 or 5 other deck builders there that I never even heard of before. So there's lots of guys around, but I don't know that I'm actually in direct competition with them. To be honest, out of all the decks I've built, I'm only really aware of 2 or 3 times when I actually quoted against another deck builder. I would say at least half of my jobs come from referrals. And I'm likely not even quoting against other companies in that situation. If they get the referral, they call me up, I quote the job, they like me, I usually get the job. So it works out well in that regard. To set myself apart, I think it's, I'm really attentive to detail. I won't call myself a perfectionist because it's tough to be a perfectionist when you build with, wood. But I have a very high attention to detail. And another good thing I do a lot is I work clean. So I've driven around neighborhoods before, and I've seen deck and fence builders. They'll get their lumber package just dropped in the driveway, and they'll bust it open. It'll kind of get strewn about, and that's where they'll leave it, and they'll work off of it like that. And I don't see, how anyone could possibly do that. So the very moment that my lumber package gets dropped in the customer's driveway, I immediately carry it all into the backyard and put it up on sawhorses off the grass. It's elevated, so it's not killing the grass, because, a sheet of plywood on the grass can kill it within a day.
Only takes exactly a day or two, and it's toast.
Ask me how I know.
We've all learned that lesson at some point.
That's right. Right. So I work clean. At the end of every day, I pick up everything. I straighten the piles of lumber, and I leave it looking, just pristine. So I think that really goes a long way.
It for sure goes a long way. I know that was actually what you just described was what was behind the naming of my first company, Fresh Decks, was a fresh take on construction workers, right? A fresh look. Because back in my early days when I was working with other guys, or before I was formally doing this as a job, the thing that drove me nuts was guys that would come into the backyard and flick their cigarette butts over the lawn. I hated that. I hated it. It was like if that was my lawn, if this is my house and construction workers were working in my yard, I would not want my yard littered with cigarette butts at the end of the day. So that was like one of my big pet peeves. And just the swearing, if the window's open, there's kids home, and just like acting like a general jackass for the most part, right? And so when I decided to formally do this and start a business, I was like, I need something that implies that we're going to be a breath of fresh air, and guys are going to show up with respect and on time and keep things clean. And at the end of the day, you put all your garbage away. And so I think, and you know what, I got a ton of compliments on every job site that I did that with. It was like on my reviews, even online, that would be one of the things that people would say, like, the workmanship is great, Shane's great, but like what really caught us off guard and we appreciated was the fact that at the end of every day, they cleaned up the yard so my dogs weren't walking all over stuff, or my kids weren't out playing with, slivered up chunks of wood and all this stuff. So that goes a long way, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And, but I will say the good thing about those rough and tough guys is they make us look really good.
That's right.
They make it easy.
You don't even have to try that hard to look.
Yeah. All the time I'm quoting decks, and the customer will say to me, you know what? if they did get other quotes, they'll say, "You're the only person that called me back. You're the only person that came to talk to me about the deck. So I'm hiring you."
Yep.
So these guys are just making it easy for us.
It's true. And it's like I said, it's a bunch of little things. It's the fact that you do clean up after yourself. It's the fact that you do call them. It's the fact that you do show up, and the fact that you're on time. It's not, you can't win every job with one thing that you do great. It's got to be a whole bunch of little things that you do well. And then it comes back to your point of your attention to detail. Sounds like you carry that through from the first time the customer calls till the time you walk off the job site and everything in between. So I think that's probably your biggest competitive advantage, is that attention to detail, and like there's just the empathy of knowing how you are putting the customer into like you're interrupting their life essentially, right? Maybe less so when you're working on a deck in the backyard, but you're in their way, you're in their space, etc. So it's just good to be mindful that a little attention to detail and some manners and cleaning up after yourself goes a long way.
Absolutely.
So Dustin, you mentioned, and I think I probably mentioned this on just about every show because I'm aware of who's listening to this and where we're promoting it, but the Instagram community, you've been quite a big part of. You're fairly active on there. You're active on the Instagram stories, which is kind of a big thing. What do you get out of that Instagram community? Both from why do you post so much information on there, and what do you get back from the people that you follow?
Well, I'm fairly new in the grand scheme of things to Instagram. I was only introduced to it about 2 years ago by a fellow tradesman, another local guy, a drywaller actually. And I got on there right away. He said there was a big group of tradespeople and I had to check it out. So I immediately created my account and I was blown away. I just couldn't believe the people that were on there sharing everything. I mean, there's not really big secrets anymore when it comes to building, and people are happy to share literally the smallest detail of what they're doing, which is just incredible. So yeah, somehow I've amassed a large group of followers. Maybe some of those are Russian bots. I don't know. But, if only, I always joke, if only we could turn followers into dollars, right?
That's right. Yep. Let me know if you figure that out.
Not likely. One great thing is I never actually thought I would get work from Instagram, but I'm pleased to say that I've got at least 3 or 4 jobs directly from Instagram, which is quite awesome. So it has actually paid off, so to speak. So some of the best deck builders in the world are on Instagram, and they'll talk to you. They're not stuck up guys. They're builders like us, and if you're curious how they did something or you have a question for them, just shoot them a message and they reply quickly, and it's incredible. So I like sharing. Maybe someday I would like to teach. So I like the story feature on Instagram because, if you're building something and you realize, you know what, this is kind of cool, you just whip out your phone and record a story about it and chat about it for a minute. And, potentially thousands of people are going to see that and comment back to you on it. And so it's just incredible. It really is.
Yeah, I think that was a value I always got out of it too, and still get out of it. I don't know there was for sure a handful of jobs that did come from Instagram. Like you mentioned, there was the odd one where somebody would, hey, I followed you on Instagram. Yeah, want to work with you. And to your point back about the referrals, where if somebody refers you, you almost got the job. All you have to do is not screw it up. Now, I felt the same way about Instagram. If somebody was following you and they've reached out to you because they've been following you on Instagram, they know more about you now than they could ever figure out about you in the half hour or hour that you're going to spend at their house on that initial consult.
That's a good point.
Right? So it really, they know you before they know you. And so that helps too. If they're calling you because they followed you on Instagram, they've followed you for a year.
That's true.
they have a pretty good rapport with you already, even though it's been
That's
one way.
true. It's like having a permanent vlog all about your building career, and it's all there for anyone to access as long as you have a public account. I kind of look suspiciously at people with private accounts. I won't follow them back. Guys, if you have private accounts, open it up. Let us see what's going on in there. I'm sure you guys.
That's right. You're being shunned by Dustin right now. So, but I agree with you though. That community of deck builders, like every trade has a big community on there. Every niche of anything has a big community on there. But that's what I fell in love with right away, was the fact that, like, before we got into the retail side of the business, I'd go into my local lumberyard at the time, and if there was another deck builder that was in there, man, it was like you just kind of went to the other side of the room. You did your thing. You looked at, what I mean? Like, there wasn't any rapport there. You weren't learning and helping each other because you're competing against each other. But Instagram opened up this whole new communication tool where there was just there was none of that, not animosity, but there was nothing to get your back up against the wall. Nobody was going to take your business. You could just share with each other. And that's exactly what happened. And then you start rolling it into the real world where people are showing up at Deck Expo and learning from each other and sharing the tips. Like you said, pretty much anybody on there, if you shoot them a DM, they're willing to walk you through and help things. And in my mind, if you can learn from somebody else's mistakes and not have to pay the cost of making them yourself, why wouldn't you? And just, you just need to understand that it goes both ways, right? If somebody shoots you a message, you've got to be open and kind of pay it back as well. But that's probably the most tangible benefit of that community, is the ability just to learn and share, and not necessarily building techniques, but like marketing your business or how to deal with certain situations or how to deal with certain customers. Like, it's huge.
Yeah. You know what? I learned a great quote, and I learned it in a very odd place. When I was a teenager, I thought I would try my hand at online poker. So I was reading poker books. Well, it didn't pan out. I'm still just here building stuff. But in the book, it said, if you want to get action, you have to give action. And that stuck with me. It's ingrained in my head. So I use that on Instagram. Like I realize that why should other people want to share information with me if I don't share back? So I'm very willing to share, and people message me with questions and I answer, and I message other people with questions like you. I've picked your brain quite a few times. So thank you, sir, for the information.
No problem. You know what? That's what helped my account to really gain the traction that it got, is because I felt a little bit about that. I don't know how long I've been on there, probably 3 years now, or 2-3 years. And that was something I loved about it right away, was learning. And so I right away just went in with an open book and was like, hey, if somebody asks me a question, I'm all in. And then I started making my posts more about like that. I wouldn't just be posting like final product. I would be posting the steps along the way that helped me get there. And I started to notice that those were the posts that people really engaged with. That's where people started like liking and commenting and asking questions. And it was like, well, people really want to know how to do something, not just see the finished product. So, and that's become quite a common theme now on Instagram. I think a lot of people are doing that, and it's even just bringing more value to the community. So you are rebranding. You've got a new logo. You've got a van that you're going to, fairly new van. You've only had that for about a year or so.
Yeah,
too,
exactly.
I think.
I got it last fall. Yeah,
you did that. Yeah, so a lot of changes in your world, and so we're coming to the end of 2018. The decking season is just about over. What does 2019 have in store for Aztec decks?
Well, as you may have seen on Instagram, I built quite a few more composite decks, or sorry, the Americans call it composite decks. That's right. I learned that down in Baltimore. Composite. A lot more composite and PVC decks than I had prior to this year. I built a couple in the years past, but it was the majority brown pressure treated decks, that Micro Pro Sienna lumber.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm going to interrupt you here, and maybe I asked this question a bit prematurely, but since you're talking about it, because I noticed you did a lot of wood projects prior, a lot of beautiful wood projects, and you're starting to get into those composite PVC jobs. What's your preference, and what do you like about the different materials that you're using?
Absolutely. I really see the benefits and enjoy building the composite decks and PVC decks more. If not just for the quality of the material. It's really disheartening after building a really nice wood deck to go back later and see the deck boards cracked and the railing posts twisted and cracked, checked, because those posts are heart lumber, and when they dry out and bake in the hot summer sun, man, they just crack apart. So it's really disheartening to see that, so the frame of the deck is still pressure treated lumber, but capping it with some really nice decking, especially one that comes with, a 25 or 30 year warranty, it's going to look like that for 25 or 30 years. You don't have to worry about what happens with wood. So I'm really looking forward to selling more composite decks. I really enjoy that. I'm kind of getting off topic. We jumped back to why wood decks. It honestly just started out that way. My business is going through this natural progression, I think. So I first started part-time framing basements, whatnot. Then I got on the decks. I built a ton of wood decks. And now I think just naturally I'm progressing into the composite decks. I think it's probably in part to the fact that I've gotten super duper efficient. I've built a ton of them. Customers are very comfortable with me. And now the higher end clients per se with the higher budgets are looking my way. So
that's right. I think you said before about how when you brought on an employee, or when you started getting a bit more serious about it, you started to raise your prices. And I think that just naturally is going to bring you some of those, because it's no surprise to anybody that composite and PVC decks cost more than wood decks. And so people are less likely to hire Chuck in a truck when they're having to spend a lot more money on their material side. They rather have somebody who knows what they're doing. So I think that's probably no coincidence that you're starting to get more calls now for PVC and composite now that you've raised your prices and kind of branded yourself a certain way.
Yeah. So 2019, I'm really, like I was saying earlier, I see the need to start a crew. I only ever hired the one employee. To find him, I interviewed maybe about 15 guys and hired the one. And I did have to let him go at the end of the season. It didn't work out. But I hear about other local guys go through 20 or 30 guys in a season. Like, that just blows my mind. I think we're all aware that the workforce isn't what it used to be. You know, young people don't want to work outside, don't want to do construction. They'd rather flip burgers at McDonald's than get their hands dirty. So it may be tough hiring, tough go, but I'm going to definitely start a crew, get at least a laborer. But preferably, I would hire a carpenter that I can train and develop into a lead carpenter, and then hire an additional laborer beyond that, have a crew of 3 maybe. Definitely work more with the composites, get into those fancier decks. I don't really foresee that I'll get into doing any curved decks next year. I don't think I'm quite to that point yet. I need to get a lot more composite decks under my belt before I go there. But it's always in my mind. I'm watching all you guys do these fancy decks on Instagram, and it's only a matter of time. I'll say that. I definitely know someday I'll be doing that caliber of work. I just need to develop my skills a bit more, get more experience under my belt with the composites, and I'll be there soon.
Yeah, those curved projects definitely allow you to set yourself apart, but obviously not everybody's calling for that. That's a here and there kind of thing that'll come up. And if a customer asks for it, I mean, I would say in your case, if you get a customer, like if you can find a way to pay for that kit before you have to buy it, you know what I mean? Yeah. Book a job that requires it first, make the money then and justify the cost, because those kits aren't cheap, right? That's an investment and you got to make sure you're going to use it. So
yeah,
it
definitely. I've priced those kits out. Sure. I know you sell them on your website, Ultimate Deck Shop. And, if you do a lot of curved decks, it's an obvious investment you got to make, but I'm just not there yet.
Yeah. And until you get people starting to ask for them, or, it's debatable whether it's worth trying to push it on people and try to put it in the conversation if they're not already asking about it. Because it is more work.
Yeah.
It's more work. It costs more money. There's more chance of failures. It's a commitment for sure. I had 10 questions. I think we've touched on them all. However, prior to this, you mentioned that you had a few questions for me, and we were going to flip the script, and you were going to become the interviewer.
Okay, let's do it.
So here's your chance.
Well, we know that you were or are still a deck builder, Fresh Decks, but you own a retail store for the last 2 years, correct? So my question is, what prompted you to go in the retail direction?
So it wasn't that I was wanting to get away from building, and it wasn't that I've always wanted to be in retail. I don't know that either of those things are true, but I had grown frustrated with the experience as a contractor buying from local lumberyards or box stores, which I never really bought a whole lot from box stores. I had committed to local lumberyards prior to that. But I was still frustrated with the fact that I was wanting to specialize and do new and great custom things with decks specifically, but there wasn't anywhere in town that I could shop that had that same passion that I had and was willing to kind of want to invest in these new techniques or new products like I was. So I found myself going to, my local lumberyard and being like, hey, I saw, I subscribed to whatever Pro Deck Builder magazine, and I saw an ad for this new product. I'd really like to try it out. Can you get it for me? And the answer was always no, we don't know what that is. We don't want to we don't want to research enough to find out what it is. We can't get that. I was like, okay. And then I'd go to the next one and come back in and be like, hey, I just found out about this. Can you get this? No, just buy what we have. We've got this, just use this. And it's like, I am trying to do things better, and I'm trying to follow the trends, and I'm trying to work with better products, and nobody's wanting to help me here. And I think I've told Fasten Master this a few times. We always joke that we started the store because of Cortex plugs, because that was one I think that broke the camel's back for me. I think I had found out about them prior to this, but I had gone to my first Deck Expo 3 or 4 years ago when it was in Chicago. And I was going just for my own personal, this is before the store app existed or anything, just because I just personally wanted to go and see all these new products I was hearing about. So I made a trip down solo, saw more stuff again, and came back, and once again was told that people couldn't get the things that I wanted to get. But the Cortex plugs really bugged me, because I did manage to talk one of the local M yards into ordering me a box of Cortex plugs for Trex Island Mist, I think it was, way back. And they finally agreed to it. I had to pay a bunch of freight on it, and they brought one box in. And so then I was sold immediately on those things. And so the next time I went back in there, I was like, okay, I've got another deck. I want a box of these plugs. Wow. And they're like, no, we can't get them anymore. I was like, but you've already got them for me once. Why can't I get them? I was like, listen, we don't sell them. Just use color match screws. That's what we have. I was like, nope. So I pushed them, and they ended up coming up with some excuse about how their trade agreements, NAFTA, blah, blah, blah. They couldn't get them in Canada. I was like, this is absolutely bonkers. Like, I know they're here. And so I was basically telling this exact story to my friend Wade at the time, who was a Finnish carpenter. Over supper one night, we were out with our wives, and I was venting my frustration. I was like, Wade, like I'm at the point where I just want to start my own. And I think at the time the idea was an online store where I bring all this stuff in that they're claiming they can't get and sell it online. Cause I can't be the only guy in Canada who's wanting this stuff that can't get it right now. And Wade kind of pushed back and was like, well, why would you do it online? Why wouldn't you, like, we should just start an actual store. And so we kind of left it at that for a couple of weeks, joked around about it. And then a couple of weeks later, Wade called me. He's like, I think we should actually start this store. Let's do this. And so that was the start of it. It literally was born out of frustration. It was not, and each of us, we were kind of looking for a reason to get into business together. Prior to that, we had never really worked together. I'd done some decks and stuff for Wade in the past, but awesome. So yeah, completely born out of frustration and knowing that there was an opportunity to do things better and be more helpful than the existing stores, and
born out of necessity
being here. So essentially, yeah. And the nice thing is that we opened the store and we were right. There's a lot of people who are looking for a place like this that wanted these products and wanted help and wanted knowledge.
Yeah. And
so you're, that's what we've become,
towards the other side of the country for me, and you've already helped me out. I couldn't get these trim head color match screws here. And so you had them shipped to me from across the country. So thank you very much, sir. You're helping people from quite far away.
Yeah, no problem. We've shipped stuff everywhere. We've shipped stuff overseas to the UK. Wow. I think we sent some stuff to Australia. Like somehow people just kind of fall upon our Instagram or our website or something. And so we've done a bit of shipping all over the place, but
yeah, that's awesome.
It's
fun. It's funny you mentioned the Cortex screws, the Aztec plug Cortex screws for trim. You know how they have new collated ones now? Well, I couldn't locally get the collated ones. The guy couldn't even tell me if they were collated or not. He thought maybe they were, but he wasn't sure. Lo and behold, I got them. No, they were not collated. So I was really frustrated because I really wanted to try those out. So
yeah, they're great. Yeah. I just had a recent chance to use them.
I can't wait to try them. Again. I saw them at the Baltimore Deck Expo, but yet to get my hands really on them for my own projects. I also wanted to ask you, when you had a truck and trailer, right? When you were building decks? Okay. Cause I have this giant cargo van basically, and we actually have a baby coming next month, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do when comes time. I got to transport this little kid around.
Car seat
people
in the
say
back,
that,
I'm sure
but you know what? I don't really want to smash my baby apart with tools. So I don't know. I did come from a pickup truck before I got the van, and it's not as ideal as the van. For people who have trucks who have never tried a van, you may say that the truck is great, but the van is a whole new level, guys. It's incredible. And if I have to go back to the pickup truck, it's going to be frustrating. Let me just say that much.
I've heard that from enough people that I'm convinced. I never ever used a van. I went from like just a pickup truck and throwing tools in the back, and that was a nightmare. And then when I got my first trailer, that seemed like the bee's knees. It was just unbelievable. And I've never used a van. Where I like the van idea is the fact that you pull up and then you leave that night with all your tools. There's no dropping a trailer, hooking up a trailer, leaving a trailer, whatever. Right, that part is super convenient, and just getting in and out of places. You're not worrying about backing. With my The trailer I had when I kind of stopped building a little bit was an 8x16 trailer. So that thing was, by the time you put the hitch on there, probably almost 20 feet long. And my truck is also 20 feet long, right? You're towing around 44 feet worth of rig trying to back into these little small streets and whatnot and drop trailers. And it's a pain for sure. I could see the value of a van there for sure. So if I had to start all over again, I've never envisioned myself as a van guy, but I think I believe you when you say that if you did it.
Yeah. And you know what? It was even Instagram. And also I've been on a contractor site called contractortalk.com for years and years and years before I even started my own business. And I've seen a lot of those guys transition to using vans. One guy in particular, Spencer at Insider Carpentry. I know he's quite popular. Now he focuses just on trim carpentry, but he inspired me to get the Ford Transit because that's what he got. And I saw the way he built his shelving in there. And it's just incredible. It's a giant trailer that you drive, you can eliminate the truck part. And so it's just incredible. Yep,
for sure. We should have Zach Detmore on here if this is going to be the topic. He is one dedicated van master. And I think he did actually have his rig down at Deck Expo this year.
Yeah, that's
for people to kind of. I think it was Deck Expo.
That's correct.
No, it was Deck Expo. Yeah, so you could check out that guy. He's like, I wish I had half his organizational skills.
Yeah, that's incredible what he's done there. Yeah, for sure.
He's got an incredible setup.
Did you have any other questions there, Shane? What's your thoughts on these like pro programs, like Trex, for example, Trex Pro? I know some of the other brands have programs. My thoughts is it's great. You get perks. I've even heard that in the States, I don't know if it's true in Canada, but Trex Pro Platinum members, they even get advertising dollars. I'm not sure how it works, but there's definitely big perks to it. The only thing that I foresee being not a problem, but an issue is that if you're part of one of these programs, you're going to be more enticed to only sell for that one brand because then it elevates you higher up. Like to become a Trex Pro Platinum member, you would literally have to build only Trex decks, I believe. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
So I've got two lines of thought, I guess. One personally what I preferred, and then one, I guess, another line of thought as to for other people maybe. I always enjoyed using different products. I liked trying everything, and obviously, like I had some that I preferred working with over others, but I like the ability to provide people with a lot of selection and using different products. So I never ever really latched onto one program. I didn't want to corner myself into one brand of decking. If somebody was going to do that, I think the Trex Pro program is probably, I haven't sat down and done a pros and cons on all these things, but I think that's probably one of the better ones out there as far as what you get back out of it. But everybody's got one now, right? So you've got your Fibron program and your Aztec and your Trex and Wolf, and they've each got the perks. The thing that I always struggled with those things was the paperwork. It was just adding more paperwork, which is the part of the job that no contractor wants to do. And so it was like, if you committed to it, if you wanted to sit down and enter your invoices and do all the reviews and post the pictures and stuff, again, it's what you get out of it, what you put into it. And I know that the Trex Summit is on right now, and there's a lot of guys going to it, and it seems like something that a lot of people really enjoy, Arizona. The Trex Summit. But you're right. In order to get to that thing, you've got to... That's right. Yeah. In order to get to that, you've got to go exclusively Trex. Yeah. That's exactly what they want from this, right? So I do think it can help with leads. If you become one of the top Trex pros in your areas, I think you probably legitimately would get leads out of that. So, oh boy, I think it's up to the person. If it's what you can get a lot out of it personally, if you commit to a program. And I think in your case, if you've worked with Trex already quite a bit, and it's probably one of the more lucrative programs. So if you were going to commit to one, that might be the one. But it just depends on what you want to do. I just enjoyed working with too many products, and I didn't want the paperwork of filling stuff out. So I tended to not latch onto them as much as a couple of them really were trying to convince me to join their program. I felt like I'd be doing my customers a disservice if I just decided to only show people one thing. And my opinion is for sure skewed now because our store carries 6 different lines, and I'm trying to be impartial to things, but Wolf is coming out with a new program this year where they're trying to remove that paperwork. I think there's an app coming on your phone where you can just take pictures of your invoices. That's a great step. I think they should all go that way. Make it easier would be my only
that's a good idea.
Feedback for all these manufacturers, because it's the paperwork. We do the paperwork for our contractors here at the store, which is a service that they love. So that's good because, like I said, nobody wants to nobody wants to do the paperwork side, so that helps them for sure. And I've seen guys walk away with checks. Like I know some guys last year did some Fibron stuff, and they did 3 or 4 decks, and at the end of the year they got back a Fibron like MasterCard for like $400 or $500. It was free money, and they loved it, right? So there's definitely perks. Yeah. And as far as the co-op stuff, I do think that I know that Trex does it. I believe Aztec might as well. I'm pretty sure they do. Yeah, you can get ad dollars. So it's usually co-op stuff. So if you want to get like a wrap on your van, you could do that. It would just be, kind of Trex and Aztec decks co-branded, but they would kick in cash for that for sure. So you do earn these dollars to put towards things. Everyone's a little bit different. Like I said, the Wolf is going to give you cash back on a debit card. I think Fibron's giving cash back on a MasterCard or a Visa. Trex is giving you money to spend on co-op stuff and fancy trips, right? So somebody should do that. I should, that's a good thing that I should tackle this winter, is maybe doing like a review of all the pro programs. That's putting a lot on my plate right there. But I think that would be something that would be very
interviewing people for your podcast. Get on that.
That's right. That hour we spent trying to get
apparently hosting podcasts over the internet isn't so easy as it seems.
Who knew, right? We're in 2018, 2019. I thought we had this internet thing figured out. But anyways, Dustin, it's been a pleasure having you on. I really appreciate you making the time for us. We took a little bit more time than I hoped to take of your time this morning.
Shane. Thanks for having me. And you know what? I just wrapped up my season. I'm going to take some time off here, wait for little baby boy to arrive. And I got some work to do around the house, so I'm just going to take it easy.
That's right, man. You deserve it. Get back in there, get that house cleaned up, take care of the family.
Too. Merry Christmas.
That's awesome, man. Well, you have a Merry Christmas. I really appreciate you being on the show. Again, for the listeners, if you have anything that you want to hear on the podcast, you know how to get to us. Oh, one question I meant to ask you. Are you going to change your Instagram name? Because we've told it's Aztec _ Carpentry.
It likely will once I make this official. I believe you can change your name on Instagram. I know some guys have just created all new accounts, but I'll likely just change the name. Yeah.
You can change your name. I've done it a couple of times. Yeah. You can do that for sure. So depending on when you're listening to this podcast, if you want to follow Dustin, and I think you should, right now it's Aztec _ Carpentry. But if somebody's listening to this 3 months down the road and that's not showing up, then try Aztec Decks, I would guess, right? Perfect. So if you have any feedback for the show, please hit me up on Instagram on either of the accounts that I operate, either the Shane Chapman account or the Ultimate Deck Shop account, and I'll be sure to see it on both of those. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Dustin. And until next week, let's get decked.